Hello, my name is Charlene Stevens, and I am the director of Arcade Project Curatorial. Our current exhibition, Gay Guerrilla, includes an artist film library in which each artist will answer 3 questions to define the new genre of queer abstraction.
My name is Christopher Stout, and I am one of the 6 artists who has worked in the summer group exhibition Gay Guerrilla. I want to begin this conversation, which is happening in my studio in Brooklyn, and acknowledge the other 5 artists in the work and say that it is my privilege to participate in this with you. And I also want to express my gratitude to Charlene Stevens, who is the curator. I feel like this is important work. The first question that we have been asked to speak about is talking about what our work does and how it relates to the emerging genre of queer abstraction. And I think that it would be important and helpful to say a couple of introductory words about queer abstraction, talk about what it is and why this is happening. I feel like the combining of the 2 words queer and abstraction for people like myself is completely exciting and revolutionary and interesting, and sort of like turns on the lights in what I can accomplish with my work, and at the same time is confusing for people both inside and outside of sort of the gay arts ecosystem. People just don't necessarily understand what it means, and part of this is because of what people think of when they think of gay art. And when we think of gay art, we think of work that was made starting in the 80s and 90s that has been termed as sort of AIDS art generation work. It includes a lot of things, overt sexuality, portraiture, self-portraiture, representation, dissent against the government, civil disobedience, AIDS, death, call for civil rights, call for change, demanding to be included. And this is some of the most powerful work that has ever been created from a civil rights context. And many of the rights that we can completely almost even take for granted, although it's been such a short period of time and societal mindsets have changed so much, we owe a lot of that culturally to AIDS art generation work. And at the same time, that work is so powerful that it has sort of become shorthand for anything that gay arts work could be about. And it has also sometimes resulted in amnesia, so that people don't understand anything outside of this specific sphere. And so my suggestion is that, as has happened in many times before, a group of artists and also academics in recent times, sometimes talking about it and sometimes completely unaware of what was going on in other parts of the world, have taken this word queer abstraction to sort of mark the beginning of new conversations by a new set of actors, and also with a new set of topics. The work, queer abstraction, is something that predates AIDS art generation work. We can trace it back to the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. It comes from a time where calling yourself lesbian or gay or anything, sexual or labeling or otherwise, was completely against the law. Like, there was nothing about the gay experience that was legal. And so when artists in the 60s or whenever were like saying like I am gay and I am painting this abstract painting as indicative of this. Like it was completely mind-blowing. It was kind of almost sort of a death sentence on your career. Like it was a radical thing to do, and these people were pioneers. And so in current time, we are sort of like exhuming that moniker and kind of shaking up the system and saying that we would like to talk about new things, and we would like those conversations to include new people. And it also may be a leading indicator of other kinds of work that may be developing. So if you look at 5 years from now, there may be all kinds of little genres of work that is calling itself gay or queer or trans or what have you, and looks a specific way or feels a specific way, and also like invites a new set of conversations, and all of this is wonderful. So that is what queer abstraction means to me specifically, and with that I will go into a conversation about the works of the show. Behind me are the two paintings that are included in the exhibition Gay Guerrilla. The first one is named The Wonderment of Otherness, Work 5, and the second one is The Wonderment of Otherness, Work 9. They're part of a larger series, and the Rourke Menzies piece, the sound art piece that you just heard, is completely important in kind of understanding what the work wants to, or how the work wants to be experienced. I would consider these to be self-portraits, and I was trying to represent sort of my mindset or my experience of being queer and creative, and I wanted to find a way to build, to paint, to make something that felt representational of that. Each of these works has a delicious something buried inside of them, and there is a phrase that I penned to represent my experience, and it's the title of the work, which is The Wonderment of Otherness. And what I did was type it over and over again in Illustrator until it filled up the entirety of an artboard, and then printed that double-sided, trimmed the edges, and then so I had a full bleed document, and then shredded it. This is all sort of technical information, but people who have design propensities will get excited about it. And so you end up with this, you know, pile of shredded writing. I call it conceptual writing. This is the wonderment of otherness. And I took this and I put it in a bowl, and took wood glue and hot water and made this sort of like nest, this magma, this core. And inside each of these is a huge nest of this shredded conceptual writing. And that sentiment to me expresses sort of like my mind state of where I am, of feeling that I experience the world a little bit differently, and also the work I put out in the world is perceived, you know, a little bit differently. And it's that sort of like je ne sais quoi, like it is sometimes hard for us to, you know, specifically exact and say like this is sort of the specific difference of what it means to be gay or queer or trans or whatever. Like we experience that certainly society or people around us are feel complete freedom in putting those markers on us or assigning them to us, but that is completely different than the markers that we may choose to talk about ourselves. And so that's the kind of dialogue that I wanted to foster vis-a-vis this work. And that is also something that I believe is completely important in understanding what my work is about. So if the first two questions are about differentiation and focus specifically on the word queer, then I think that what I can talk about in the third question is that second word, which is abstraction. And I would say that in my studio, there are two types of development that are going on. And one is my understanding of how I can represent queer theory and my experience in my work. And then the second sort of development area is metaphysical. It's the work itself. And so it has to do with my fascinations around color or monochrome and learning the language of how different textures relate to each other, and my complete like using edges that are very hard, and then also in the same works usually like edges that are very dappled and soft, gradients, building up dimensions in my work. So we are always sort of like going between, you know, is this painting or is this sculpture, and how do those things even relate to each other? You know, all of those things are also present in my work. And so even though if I am the most successful and linear at helping someone understand the queerness of the work, it does not at all diminish like the challenge and my duty as an artist. You know, at the end of the day, it still has to be great art.
Thank you for joining us. If you would like to learn more about Arcade Project Curatorial's program, you can find us on arcadeprojectzine.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and on Artsy.